Delicious indeed.
I'm psyched to talk about Rogue today.
Yeah?
Because I hate Rogue. But I actually like Rogue now. After we decided to talk about it and I forced myself to play about 10 games, I was like, this class is sick.
It's
That's
really fun.
awesome. That's great.
Way more fun than I've ever had with Rogue.
All right.
I wish that's what I had been doing.
Mm.
I've
Uh-oh.
been playing a lot of Overwatch, so just so you're aware.
Yeah. Is it amazing or what?
I've been playing a lot of Destiny.
It is
They got a
so
Valentine's
good.
Day thing going on.
Oh.
All right, Eve, I put a bunch of stuff in the show notes there for when we talk about class cards, legendaries, all that jazz.
Discount deck of the week. You need a C in there.
Okay, you guys ready to record this thing?
Let's
Yo.
get it on.
Yo.
Okay. Just
Yo.
give me like 5
Yo.
seconds
Yo.
of silence and we'll go. Here we go.
What's happening?
Time for swords.
Take this time to consider your past deeds.
Stop asking questions. You had your chance. Let the games begin.
Greetings, visionaries. Welcome to Velen's Chosen Podcast, a podcast about heroes of Warcraft within the Hearthstone realm. Joining me today, I have Eve Martin
Hello.
and Andrew Brown.
What up?
We're a podcast geared to buff the game of the discount players, or those people that are budget-minded as they play on the ladder and just want to look to improve. We provide some intermediate and basic advice to help people continue gaining skill on the ladder, in the arena, no matter what you want to do. And we want to help you try to tweak your decks based off of what your card pool looks like. So today we're going to be talking about our 2 rogue discount decks of the week, which are not discount decks, but we're going to put them in such a way that you can have them in your collection and look for some substitutions. And Eve has got a brief update on what she's been working through with her basic card ladder climb. And last, we're actually going to revisit our classic set of cards, and we're going to try to look at which ones we kind of are going to predict are going to be more enduring cards. And then we'll have a bunch of disclaimers to go along with that. So I'm glad to have you guys at the live show here in chat. We're really geared for that. Why don't we just start with Eve's basic card stuff today?
Yeah, it's going to be real brief. It sucked.
Yeah?
That was not fun at all, trying to
Yikes.
play with just basic and classic cards. I'm hoping it'll be different when all the Nax and GVG cards are taken out. Then you might
mean like
see
this
some
one?
resurgence, like we're saying.
Have to deal with
Yes.
that
No
guy?
more of that.
We'll see some resurgence of good classic cards that were played before Nax came out and before GVG came out, and then we'll see how they synergize with the new cards that we get from the new expansion. But right now, yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think it's possible because a lot of people that I'm going up against, even if they're down at 20, have a decent card pool. You know, they're not
Yeah.
playing with just basic and classic cards.
Yeah.
So even if you're down at like 25, you're still playing with people who could have a couple of legendaries.
Yeah, but I think it
Apparently.
fills out towards the end of the season, though. Like, the longer the season goes, the more likely
Yeah.
you are to face people with lesser collections at that rank, right?
I could try later, towards the end of the month and see if it makes a difference. But I'm just getting face rolled, which
Yeah.
is not fun for a while.
Right.
I mean, I
right,
got
exactly.
one. I got
Losing
one.
isn't fun?
Got one win.
Is that what you're saying? Is that accurate?
Well, there's a difference between losing and then like never having a chance.
Yeah.
Like
Being never lucky.
Never getting a foothold. There's just a lot of really good cards out there that are like
You get nothing. You lose. Stay, sir.
They're way outvaluing your cards. So you play something that's decent, and then they play something that's way.
Yeah,
way
basic
better.
cards aren't really known for their value. They're more of like tempo cards, like Fireball,
Yeah.
Swipe, or removal cards. They're not necessarily like staple minions usually.
And to be honest, my forte isn't deck building. A lot of times I will net deck and then tweak it based on what I'm playing and what I'm seeing on ladder. Make a couple substitutions, but most of the time, like, I find a deck to start out with and then just start changing
What
it
class
up
were
a
you
bit.
playing?
Mage.
Oh, mage.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I figure that's what the new player starts out with, right? They give you mage, and you have the most cards in mage to start out with, and you're probably most familiar with it. But yeah, it's tough. I'm done.
Sorry.
Tell me about your happiness with Rogue. Make me feel better.
All right, Andrew. Andrew was just telling us in the pre-show about his rogue happening, so we're gonna go straight into discount deck of the week.
What a contraption!
Isn't she scrumptious? She's my revolutionary, non-pollutionary mechanical wonder.
I hate Rogue.
Why, Andrew? Why?
That is all. But so here's what happened. Earlier in the week, we were trying to figure out what we were going to talk about, and I can't remember who suggested Oil Rogue, but I saw that and let out an audible sigh of disgust. And I queued up my collection, made an Oil Rogue, and went in. I was not looking forward to it. Rogue is the class I'm least far along with as far as ranked wins and leveling up. I'm only down to Shaman and Rogue now for not at level 60, so got a little bit left to go. But Rogue I'm way behind on. So started playing it. First 3 games, I won, and something clicked for some reason. In the past, I've always, with the combo cards, just not known exactly what I'm looking for, exactly how to play it. But something clicked this week, and I get it, and it's like a lot of fun to play. So
It's awesome.
on that note, I'll say that Rogue is probably one of
No,
the trickiest.
which rogue deck were you playing though?
I was playing the oil one.
Okay,
I modified the list that we've got here,
Yeah.
but
sure.
but I had a lot of fun with it. It is probably one of the toughest classes to play. It is not like Secret Paladin where you want to play the highest, mana cost minion that you can. You've got to find you've got to go through all of your options because you're going to have several options on every turn for what to do.
Right.
And then you always have to check for lethal. I barely missed it if a buddy of mine hadn't been watching me and he said, hey, go face, prep, oil, Blade Flurry, you win. Oh, yeah, I was going to trade and stuff. But so you always have to check for lethal.
It's one of those
especially-
decks where right around turn 5, you're just like always checking for lethal.
Yes,
Like
yes.
we always say that that's a good move to do when you're playing any deck, but like it's hard to describe. Like you have to do it because like
Yes.
you will just be like, okay, so I can remove this minion, this minion, this minion, because that's what you're doing. Like essentially most of the game, just like remove, remove, remove. Play the board, maybe get your Violet Teacher, your Tomb Pillager out. Man, that's good stuff.
So what
though.
you're saying is winning is fun.
I guess you could say
Yes.
that.
Although I went on a really good win streak, but then I did the thing I always do, which is went on a losing streak. Win 3, lose 3. I'm right back to where I was. So, but I'm having a lot of fun with it, especially since it just feels new because it's something so different from what I'm used to.
That's cool.
All right, so let's kind of talk through my deck list, and then Andrew, I'm just gonna like run through the deck list real fast, and then see what Andrew has changed in his list. So you got these are staple non-negotiable cards. I'll go through first. Okay, you got 2 backstabs, 2 preps, 2 deadly poisons, 2 blade flurries, 2 eviscerates, 2 saps, and then 2 SI7 agents. At least 1 oil, and then you have to have at least 1 heal bot and at least 1 Azure Drake and Lotheb and double sprint. Okay, the only things that kind of change will be if you don't have Dr. Boom, Blood Mage Thalnos, a second Azure Drake, a second heal bot, 2 Tomb Pillagers are kind of floating around. Some people are running 2 oils. Edwin Van Cleef is also a big, huge body a lot of the times in the deck, and really helps the power level. And then
Blood
you could
Mage.
Blood Mage Thalnos, yep. And then you could be thinking about Thalnos is really easy to replace because most often you're using him for just the spell damage aspect. So you could go Cobalt Geomancer, and then Violet Teachers is the other flex spot. So Andrew, what have you changed in your list?
I've got well, the big thing that I saw on this list that I didn't like was that there's only 1 oil. So I took out a Tomb Pillager to put that in, to put in a second oil. You don't need 2 oils, but for me, it just gives you that extra buff and more of a guarantee that you're going to run into it, because there's a lot of win conditions in this deck, but that's a pretty significant one. Like that turn that I almost missed that I said if I hadn't had oil in my hand, I wouldn't have been able to do that. But
Right.
if you've got 1 minion on board, a weapon in hand, oil, Blade Flurry, Eviscerate, you're pretty set.
Right. Now, the only difference I think with running 2 oils versus not is that the Tomb Pillagers really give you a super strong early game, which is why I love playing them.
Really?
So I have won games by just having a Tomb Pillager just stick, which sounds weird, but like I've had my Tomb Pillagers stick, or I've been able to have them go in and die, and then I have the coin, and I'm able to use that coin on a super big Edwin Van Cleef turn, and then the next turn I just oil up and they're dead. So most
Wow.
of the time that I'm playing the deck, I'm playing actually against a lot of slower decks. I played a lot of mirror matches and or not
Mirror
a lot.
matches.
I've actually played against the mirror match and against Miracle Rogues probably the most, which is really weird.
Wow.
Like I have a super weird meta down between rank 17 and rank 14, I think. So I haven't been playing a whole lot because I got into the Overwatch closed beta. But
Boo.
I'm really enjoying it.
No, that's fun. The only other difference I had was instead of Dr. Boom, I'm running a Big Game Hunter. So
Okay.
I didn't make that choice. I guess I saw a different list, and but that's the only other difference there. I will say that you mentioned before that this isn't necessarily an extreme budget deck, but we've got to talk about what the substitutions are for budget players. There's something like preparation. I don't know if you can do this deck without that. You can try, but it's so huge for being able to do a 4 mana cost sprint, or just procking off your Violet Teacher
Or
a couple
even
times,
just
or
prepping
Edwin.
a fan.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you have to run without preps, you should replace it with a Tomb Pillager. That's like the only other thing that you use in your deck that gives you something back that costs mana. You know what I mean? Or that discounts mana. There's also we've also included a good Miracle deck list that Super JJ's been running. So if you want to do that and you actually have Malagos, that's kind of how you can play Miracle right now. There's an alternative list that I haven't been able to find that a couple friends of mine were messing with, but you basically play double Tomb Pillagers in a Miracle Rogue with 2 Gadgetzan Auctioneers, and you run double Cold Blood and double Arcane Golems, or 1 Arcane Golem, and then like you can just run a Faceless Manipulator. So it's really crazy.
That's a crazy combo.
Yeah. But it does work. It's just not as consistent, I think, as the Mally list.
Yeah.
So it's fair to say that Rogue is kind of one of the classes that's a bit higher difficulty level of difficulty to play.
It's
to
kind of
figure out.
equivalent to a Freeze Mage, but a little easier.
It's not like really intuitive, which card you're going to play on each turn. So there's a bit of a learning curve for it.
Yeah.
I think
What I
the
mentioned-
mulligan's the hardest part. Don't you agree, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm really interested to hear what you guys think, because I think that I've looked it up in the past, but this week I just kind of went with my gut. And one of the things I learned is that almost every game you're going to use your hero power on turn 2 and not attack with it. Basically, you're prepping yourself for a deadly poison the next turn or something like that. If you've got something to attack on the board and kill, that's different.
Right.
But for the most part, you're going to do things that way.
Something that I've come across that is really kind of sad, but every game that I've said this, I've won. So if you're playing against a rogue, and the rogue on turn 2 daggers up and smacks you in the face, I have just said in my mind I'm winning this game because I know that you don't play Rogue that way.
Yeah.
So playing with Rogue is very tricky because you have to play your dagger on turn 2 almost every single game. And then you have to, if there's anything on the board that you can't kill with your dagger, unless you have your backstab on a 3 health minion, then you shouldn't be attacking it. And you shouldn't be attacking your opponent in the face. That 1 damage is basically like playing arcane missiles on turn 1, right?
Right.
It's essentially the same thing.
You want to be able to get more value out of your deadly poison,
And
out of
your-
everything else.
Your oils
so
and your blade
being,
flurries, yeah.
being rogue is being more patient, waiting for the right time to get the most value.
Yeah,
And
and
you have
I-
to be comfortable with low health, like playing
I think that,
Reno
that
lock.
in that way it kind of feels like Patron Warrior.
Yeah.
Kind of how you're waiting and your health might be getting low and you just gotta, and then you pull out the big combo and they're dead.
Yep.
And it's just like Patron where the math is really important, that you've got to be figuring out, hey, just like a Death Spite, Frothing Berserker kind of turn, do I have enough this turn that I can actually get through?
It's a little interesting too with your spell damage, right, Andrew?
Yeah, the spell damage can affect that. One of the basic things I'm still trying to learn is with Blade Flurry, that is affected by spell damage. So you've got an Azure Drink on, because it's a spell card. And spell damage, it gives you +1 on any spells that you cast. So when you use Blade Flurry, if you had used Deadly Poison on your dagger, so
Does
you've got a
Blade
3
Flurry for
attack,
4.
and then you've got Azure Drake out, then you use Blade Flurry and it's going to hit everything for 4. So
I did not know that
That's
because
why
I
the
thought
deck's
it
really
was
good.
do the damage of your weapon. So that's like a static number.
it is that, but spell damage will buff that. It'll
Yeah.
only buff it for the spell. It won't
Is
actually
that
affect your dagger.
intended?
Right, so like
Yeah, it
if
is.
you use Tinker's Sharpsword oil, your weapon will essentially be 4 attack and hopefully 2 charges. And then you're able to spread that over to another minion, so that minion will gain 3 attack. Is that right, Andrew, or is it 4?
4.
I think it's
Or
4,
it's
so
No, it's 3.
is it 3?
For
I think it
oil?
is 3.
Yeah,
it's 3 and 3,
It's-
right?
Mhm.
Yeah, because Deadly
Okay.
Poison's 2. So what you want to do is you basically want to have a minion on the field. So let's say there's an SI7 agent that can attack on your field. You play Prep Oil, and the oil will hit both targets because of the combo, and you have a 4 attack minion. You can essentially hit them for 4 damage with your weapon. If you have, well, let's rework this back to like Azure Drake, right? So if there's an Azure Drake, that's a spell damage card. So you hit them for 4 with the weapon physically, and then you have enough mana to play your Blade Flurry. So then your Blade Flurry will not only hit the board for 4, it'll also get buffed to 5. It'll hit the board for 5, and it'll hit your opponent for 5 because Blade Flurry hits both. And then you've already hit them, so that's up to 9 damage. And then your Azure Drake has 4 attack and now has an additional 3, so he hits for 7.
7.
So you hit
yeah.
the opponent for 16 damage in one play.
Which is pretty significant. And honestly, that combo right there is how you're going to win a lot of games with this deck. So the more you can practice and get to the place where you have that, the better. And it takes a lot of cards in your hand to do that. So one thing that I learned early on was don't be afraid to use prep sprint on a turn. It's got to be the right turn, but if you have nothing in your hand and you need to cycle through some cards, go for it. I had one game earlier today where I needed a Blade Flurry. I was playing against a Tempo Mage. I've been running into so many Tempo Mages. I don't know if you guys
It's
are,
very good
are
right
too.
now.
And they're all running Mirror Images, which is the worst card in the entire game. That's not accurate. It just, every time they played it for some reason this week, I have no answer. So I played a game this morning where they played the Mirror Image. I had already Deadly Poisoned my dagger. All I needed was Blade Flurry. So I decided I'm going to cycle through some cards. So I just put Blood Mage Thalnos down just to draw a card. I played a Fan of Knives, which wasn't really effective. But eventually I got that Blade Flurry. I was able to take out everything. I ended up winning that game. So finding the high value cards, or the way to get the most value out of your cards, is going to be huge. Don't wait too long, but use it.
Yeah, this deck is super complex if you're on a budget, right? So let's just try to strip a lot of the cards that budget players are going to be concerned with. So
Let's
prep
go.
is non-negotiable, right? You got to craft both preps if you want to play rogue, period.
Yeah, I with any budget deck that we do, I think it's fair for us to say there's one epic or legendary that is required, and that's the one. Especially with this one, none of the other ones are. They're all going to help you, but you can find replacements, and we shall do exactly that
Oh, yeah.
right now.
Okay. So, what is the most important legendary of the 4 here? Obviously, Loatheb is the Naxxramas card, so we're actually just going to throw that out. Because that's just something that I think people would have at this stage.
Sure.
And will be going away eventually, so keep that in mind.
Wait. Oh, you got Boom, Edwin, and
Thalnos.
Blood Mage. Yeah, I mean, I'd say Thalnos, especially because it's a any class can use it. There's not a ton of classes that really want Thalnos, but it's a pretty good one to
Mage.
craft if
In
you're
the
looking for
Sun
a
Mage
legendary.
deck, yeah.
It's like Mage and Rogue, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they can do something with Warlock to bring Thalnos into Warlock soon, like a spell-based Warlock. I would love to see if Thalnos would synergize with the Rafam card, or if
Well,
you
they
could...
have Malygos in a Warlock deck, don't they? So wouldn't it make sense
Yeah,
to...
Mallylock.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
Mallylock is based off of a 3-card combo win condition, which
Yeah.
doesn't really
Okay.
benefit from that.
I've never played Mallylock, so I
Thalnos
don't know much
lets
about the deck.
Thalnos does two things in this deck. It gives you a cheap. Well, it does a ton, it does so much.
It's a
That's why
utility
it's really
legendary.
valuable. But really, two things are that it gives, or no, it's the three. I'm sorry, it's the card draw that you get from it, the spell damage, so you get a little extra boost. But then it's such a cheap minion that it can activate any of your combo cards later in the game pretty easily.
Yeah. Like, it's also really hilarious to have a Thalnos on the board as a body, and then, like, they just don't remove it because they're pushing for damage at the end of the game, and you're like, well,
Thanks for that.
You've just given me 1 extra damage plus 4, or plus 3, so this is a 4 attack minion that can hit you in the dome, and then I got an additional 1 damage to your dome on top of that with my Blade Flurry. And then if I have an Eviscerate, you're just toast.
That's right.
And they
So-
don't want to give you card draw. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can see that.
I personally I'm gonna go against Andrew, not just because of Devil's Advocate, but because I've played my list with the Pillagers. I think that if you're running double Pillager, you should be playing Van Cleef in this list. Like, it's so good. Like, I was almost every game that I've gotten Van Cleef in my hand, I've been able to drop him at 8 health and an 8 attack.
So the pillagers are the ones that when they die, they give you a coin?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
So if they die and
So
they give you a
obviously
coin,
is awesome for Rogue.
yeah, you
Yes.
can like.
Set off all your
I've been
combos.
basically able to drop it on turn 5, or turn 6. So turn 6, I'll basically play like Deadly Poison, Prep, Fan, Coin, Van Cleef, and if I had any other extra things, I might have enough to like play an Eviscerate on a minion and remove it, and then have an 8/8 on the board and remove the board.
I'm just going to put this out there because I'm willing to be shot down and made fun of. But
Oh, that's okay.
aren't there some, well, just for now, some mech cards that give you 1-cost spells that might be good for making combos if you're looking budget-wise?
I think some people were trying to do
Like the
Clockwork
1-mana
Gnomes
one.
a while ago, weren't they? Like when
It'd be-
LOE dropped?
It'd be interesting to try an oil mech rogue because the Iron Sensei card is if you can make
so
it work,
snowball-y.
it can destroy the game. But it's really hard to pull off. So I think there might be some. You could now maybe we're trying to do too many things if you make it a miracle oil mech rogue.
No.
But but I don't know. There's something to that. I bet you could have a lot of fun with a deck like that, bare minimum.
Yeah,
So,
I think
like,
Edwin's
maybe
definitely
if you
better
didn't
in
have
Miracle.
Tomb Pillagers.
Wait, what's that?
Where are Tomb Pillagers from? They're from League of
League of
Explorers?
Explorers, yeah.
Yeah. So if it's possible you don't have those, you might be able to replace them with the 1-mana mech that when it dies, it gives you a spell.
Spare part. I mean, the difference between a spare part and playing Pillager is you can throw away the coin just to get an additional 2 attack, 2 health on Van Cleef and not feel bad about it. And you don't have to pay anything for it. It's not even costing you a card. It's extra tempo that Tomb Pillager is able to give you. So the coins in this deck are all centrifugal around either card draw or playing a big Van Cleef or like enabling a Violet Teacher. So your coins are your enablers, just like spare parts. The difference is the coins are free and the spare parts
Yeah,
cost.
spare parts cost 1, so it's
Mhm.
going to throw off your calculations.
But
Yeah.
back to Eve's point, she's trying to give you a solution if you don't have that card.
Yeah.
My difference is we always tell people just get the adventures, all of them eventually, as soon as you
Yeah.
can. So that's our tiptoe on the fence, right, guys? Like,
Well, and I'm trying to look through right now because I know we've got listeners who don't have Thalnos, don't have Edwin,
but
maybe
probably have
even
Boom.
Yeah, I don't
So-
have those 2 cards.
Yeah, so
I don't
so
have Thalnos and I don't have Edwin Pen Cleave, so...
Yeah.
what are some things we could do? I'm even thinking, really simply a
Requesting
loot hoarder
adventure?
could replace Blood Mage Thalnos, just for the card draw. You're not going to find something that does everything in there, but I think finding a 2-drop minion like him or a Cobalt Geomancer.
So you either go for the spell damage or you go for the card draw. You can't go...
Yeah,
Is that
Thalnos is the most valuable because he
Yeah.
does everything.
Loot
But
Hoarder
if
is
you-
definitely better than the Novice Engineer, just because it's 2 attack. So if it
Yeah.
sticks, then they're toast. So
Yeah. I would say Cobalt even isn't that bad because he's cheap and he gives you that little extra push. Everyone's got him at least, but
But
Loot
again,
Hoarder's
like
good too.
it's really hard to say. You guys that want to play this deck, especially for Eve, right? She's in the exact shoes of our listeners right here. Like, I don't have Thanos, I don't have Edwin.
I do
how
have
can I
Dr.
play this?
Boom.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, Dr. Boom is one of those cards that's just like, he's a good legendary, but he
Yeah.
doesn't really synergize with Rogue. He's just a really good legendary. Like, you put him
Yeah.
in there.
He's put in the deck just because it's just a 1-card win condition that you don't have to build
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
Which
But
is
what
the
about
problem.
something that would synergize better with Rogue? I mean, obviously Van Cleef, if you had him, but I
Yeah,
don't.
that's the trick with all of the classic cards, like why I think Blizzard's choosing to keep classic cards. All of the class card legendaries, for the most part, aside from like King Crush, are like
King
very,
Crush,
very
he's a charge. If you're talking about Hunter, Phase Hunter,
well, I
has
mean, for the
charge.
most part, they are centralized around the theme of the class. Like, they're made to be a build around with everything they've already set up.
he's a beast and he has charge. That's pretty much Blizzard saying, we know Phase Hunter is always going to be a thing. This is what hunters are made to be.
I've got 2 ideas for a replacement for Edwin. I want to hear what you guys think.
Awesome.
And again, I want to say how I feel first, if that's okay. Can we talk
Okay.
about our feelings for a moment?
I'm okay with that.
When people say that cards are irreplaceable, that's actually not accurate. So we mentioned this on the show. Just want
That's
to
true.
hit it again that you can replace any card with any card. It's never going to do the same amount, but because we're about talking for budget players, for players who may not have every single card in the game, we are always going to talk about, okay, yeah, Thalnos in a sense is irreplaceable, but for the person who doesn't have it, it doesn't have dust, we want them to still be able to try this deck out. It's never going to be as effective, but we can find some clever ways to get around it with some common cards that you might have that'll do similar things and allow you to at least be somewhat effective with the deck. So that being said, Edwin Van Cleef, here's what I'm thinking. You can either go with the Jungle Panther or you can go with a South Sea Deckhand. What do you think?
I think that both of those
What's
are
the Jungle
decent.
Panther? Like, I get the South Sea Deckhand,
It's a
right? He's got
4/2
charge
with
if you have a
stealth
weapon equipped.
that you can set up a big Blade Flurry turn with.
That's exactly it.
And that's what essentially Edwin does, but he has more attack on it. So he's better in more situations than a Jungle Panther. That's the
Okay,
only
so Jungle
difference.
Panther, if I'm getting this right, has stealth. So you're keeping him around so that you can set up a good turn.
Exactly. The nice thing about it is that with Tinker, if he lasts, you can use the oil and you've got a target right there for it. Boom, face.
And
You
of
win.
course, South Sea Deckhand has
You
charge.
win
if you have,
because you
weapon.
use Jungle Panther.
Just make sure you charge with him first before you use your weapon. Because I've made that mistake before.
Uh-oh.
Where I used the weapon first and it was gone and then he didn't have charge anymore.
That's not good.
Yeah.
That
Those are
was
the things
like a
I'm looking at.
Rookie mistake.
I think another really random option is essentially a similar concept to what Van Cleef does, but it has to hit the board first. you basically can do half the value of Van Cleef by playing a questing adventurer or a Shade of Naxxramas.
Yeah.
Like yeah, I've talked with Hippie Corpo in the chat. He's Vincent and then Hamboy. They're doing a lot of they're definitely doing what I'm saying. Is Shade is just definitely better than Jungle Panther.
Yeah, Shade would be good too. Yeah.
So
Didn't think
Shade of
about that.
Naxxramas,
yeah, because
which
it's
is also
continually
going
getting
away.
bigger.
But yeah, for now. So what's the cost of Shade?
3.
3. So it's perfect
That's good.
right there.
And Questing Adventure is also a 3, I believe. But I think Questing Adventure would be a really fun way to like surprise your opponents if you're on a budget. You can just drop a
Is
bunch
Questing
of spells.
Adventure a rare?
He's a rare
Yes.
classic card.
You probably have one if you've been playing for a while.
Another card that you could think about would be like for Thalnos. I think Andrew hit the nail on the head. And like Hamboy would say, our honorific 4th member. Basically, it's really, really tough to replace Thalnos. He's probably a lot harder to replace than Edwin. Edwin, you can just like cycle out for like a South Sea and just go for burst instead.
Sure.
You could even cycle out Boom for a South Sea as far as I'm concerned. So, but like going back to Thalnos, it's like, do I want the spell damage or do I want the card draw? As a rogue, you want all the things. Like spell damage and drawing are just like the 2 things you want as a rogue. I mean, look at the other cards. Fan of Knives, that's 2 draw. You have 2 sprints in the deck with preps that's able to draw like 6 of your cards in your deck. And you don't really have anything else. And then you got your Azure Drake, so you've already got a lot of draw cards. But this deck is like the best when you have 5 cards left in your deck and you kill them. Like that's how the deck plays.
It's a lot of fun. If you're like me and you were scared by Rogue, give it another shot. Watch some people like Super JJ who are really good with Rogue, and ask a lot of questions about, why is he making the turns he can, and we talked about how you're going to have a lot of options every single play. Talk through them to yourself, like literally out loud. Well, I could do this because I'd like that, or I could actually do this, and run through all of your cards, especially in the later game. You will probably be a life coach and you will rope on every single turn, but you kind of have to make sure that you maximize whatever you've got.
Yep. So moving forward, we're going to do 2 closing statements. The first one is what Vincent brought up in the chat. If you're running up against a lot of aggro, you may want to actually cut Boom and put a Farseer in. Like you just really need that early game to not die. You can even put 2 Farseers in here and figure out what else you want to cut. Second thing is with this deck list, if you want to figure out what cards are replaceable, go to Edwin Van Cleef and down. And besides Tinker Sharpshooter Oil, number 2, your SI7 agents are the only cards you can say are not replaceable. Just look through all those cards and try to cycle them around. You can run like 1 Azure Drake, 1 Sludge Belcher you can even throw in. You can do 1 Anti-Keelbot, 1 Sludge Belcher. You can do no Valid Teachers and just Tomb Pillagers. Like, there's so much flexibility with this deck.
Now every
Alright.
time I hear like the name of a card that's going to be ushered out in Standard, I'm like, what is
Rip.
this deck going to be like afterwards?
Rip Nax.
Well, we got to get used to not playing with Dr. Boom in Standard anyway. You got to
Yep.
start looking at decks and going, he's not going to be around.
Okay,
Which
so
honestly I was fine without it. But
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's time to move into the main topic of the day, which Eve was so gracious to provide for us this week, which is which are your enduring and classiest of the classic cards? All right, guys, we got to fly through this though. So I wrote down everything of note, even if it's just within passing, and I put ones by them in our full show notes, behind all of the rares, all of the epics, and all of the legendaries. So we will not be discussing common cards. But Eve, why don't you introduce what your idea was for going over this topic?
Remind me?
You were talking
It
about
looks like
which
we've
cards
got
are sticking around, right?
Yeah.
Right, yes. Well, the thing is that it's kind of hard to say because we're going to have to find out how they synergize with the new cards we're getting in the expansion. So we can sort of talk about how these things just have value. And so going forward, when they're not coming up against Nax cards and they're not coming up against GVG cards, then they're going to be more valuable. But it's still like, I mean, depending on what cards we get, there might be a whole bunch of cards that just outvalue these as well. And then again, they won't be as
We
playable
could
as
get another boom
before.
for all
Yeah,
we know.
so it's kind of like we can make predictions, but then we can be totally shut down by all the cards that show up.
And all of these cards are subject to change still.
Yes, right. Some of them, if they feel like they're too overpowered in different decks, or how they're going to synergize with the new cards, they might have to change them as well.
It'll be fun to see which cards come out of the woodworks, like Seeker Keeper did last time,
Yeah.
with Seeker Paladin.
Right.
So we're not really encouraging anyone to craft these cards thinking, oh, these are going to be available in the long run forever, so let's
These are
make
just
these
like our
and we have them. But definitely don't start dusting.
Yeah. Don't dust, don't even craft. Like, I'm not even telling people to craft cards. I'm just like, just hang tight, collect your gold, hoard it like a Seeker Keeper, and chill.
Be patient. It's kind of hard for somebody if they're starting to play the game right now and they're like, but I don't want to wait until this new
Right.
expansion comes out, like, to be able to play and to be valid.
It's very true.
And I don't want to craft a Dr. Boom, but he's in all the decks right now, so what do I do until the next expansion comes out? So you can kind of look at these cards and be like, well, these are going to be around forever. They're not taking these out. They might change them. Keeper of the Grove is just a really great value card. It has two options of things that you can do that are really helpful, the silence and the 2 damage. Savannah Highmane is just super sticky. Do you think that could be one of the ones that they might want to look at for being overpowered?
I don't know. I feel like it's just the only
Whenever I
card
come
that
up
Hunter
against
has.
it, it feels
It's
tough.
good.
It's
It's
a
a
good
good,
card,
good
but I
card.
feel like it's like the only one that Hunter has to bridge to mid game and late game style Hunter decks.
Yeah, unless they give them another tool, this is kind of really, it's a heavy
don't-
card. That's for
I
sure.
saw Ponyhoff playing with Ball of Spiders in Arena, and that was for real.
That's really good in Arena.
The only way that you can get the spider in standard play.
After standard, yeah. It's play
Yeah.
Ball Spiders.
Counterspell, I think there's nothing wrong with that card. It's going to be around for a while. Blizzard, Equality, Aldor Peacekeeper. God, I hate that card.
Aldor
Oh.
nude, or nude. What am I saying? Aldor. He's like the spay and neuter company. Just like takes
Yes.
everything
Oh
down.
my gosh, it feels so bad when you. It's like worse than removing your big minion, right? You put out your big, huge, and
It's like,
then
no,
they're
you
like,
can
I'll
keep
leave
it.
it
We'll
there.
just make it a little wuss.
I'm not gonna care about it anymore because I'm just gonna make it one attack. Oh, but you know what? You can get revenge if you silence your own minion and make it back to the 8/8 or whatever it was, and then
true.
be like, "Ha! You wish you had removed this." Anyway, Divine Favor. You guys were talking about was broken.
I
I'm
still think that
not
they
really
should
sure
change
about
that
that.
card.
Yeah.
I disagree, but that's okay.
I just don't like
Probably
getting
because
punished
you and me,
for-
Andrew, when we play it in our deck, don't really get these miraculous games that they were talking about.
I'd say it works like 33% of the time for me.
As long as there's lots of aggro decks out there, there are times when you can get like one card off of it if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I still don't like the card because it just punishes players that are trying to control the game and doing really well at it, and then they're like, "Oh, I dumped my hand. Here's a card that lets me just copy my opponent, fill my hand, and just blow them up."
I understand the feeling of it doesn't feel fair. Like if you were, playing well and keeping card advantage, and then they go, "Ha, now I have card advantage." Yeah,
You know what
I
doesn't
the
feel
feeling.
fair, which I forgot to mention before, is when you're playing against a rogue and they sap your huge minion that you just played. And my response
Sap is
every time
really
I've come up
strong.
against that is, "Hey, opponent, will you please let me play the game? Because right now you're not letting me play, and I'd like to play."
So that's
If
why
that's
you
okay
enjoyed
with
playing
you.
Rogue this week. Just like, no, you can hold that. You can keep that. I don't want to see that anymore. Keep your shredder.
I played against a handlock and sapped his Twilight Drake twice, and it was just like, yeah, you just take that back, and I'm just gonna kill you. Don't worry about it. It's all good, man.
Oh man, Handboy says rip mini Tyrians.
Very much.
That's how you win. It's like Sap Tyrion Blade Flurry.
Yep.
Well, the counter to Sap was Dr. Boom, right? Because you still get the boom bots. And then you put them
That's
out
why
again,
they're
you get two
removing
more
him
boom
from
bots.
standard.
Sometimes it's still the right play, but
Yes.
Makes sense.
Man.
Yes.
All right. So
Shadow Madness. I don't remember that card. What does it do?
Shadow Madness I included in the list because I feel like that's going to be a really big staple in a lot of Priest decks moving forward.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be massive. Like, it's really good in Priest, even now, against certain matchups. You just don't normally see it. But, man, like, if you can... There's some ways that you can, like, Shadow Madness with a Wild Pyro on the board, and it just, like, swings the whole game. It's just, like, really crazy.
What does the card do?
It steals a minion with 3 attack or less for 1 turn and basically lets you attack with it. So
Okay.
if you have
Yeah,
a Belcher
you ever had
on your
that?
opponent's side, you can steal it and kill somebody's minion and attack with their Belcher, and then you get their token.
I've seen more of the make a minion smaller and then steal it permanently.
Yeah, that's the Cabal
the-
Shadow Priest with Shrinkmeister.
yeah. But Shriekmeister is going away, yes?
And Cabal is only for 2 attack,
Mhm.
whereas you can attack immediately with Shadow Madness and basically trade their minion into another one of their minions and effectively remove 2 minions. Sometimes Shadow Madness is basically destroy 2 of your opponent's minions.
Yeah.
So
Holy Fire, Blade Flurry, S1-7 Agent, just really, really good. I mean, I've never seen a rogue deck that doesn't have those in it.
I mean, even
Feral
Rogue
Spirit coming back after aggro. Shaman is a thing. Lava Burst, Lightning Storm, Mana Tide Totem? Really?
If you want to play Control Shaman, you basically need to card draw, and there's no other way to draw cards.
I've seen some Control Shaman decks popping up lately. I don't know if it's going to be a resurgence, but it's interesting that it's...
I think if they really want to make
Coming back.
Shaman good in mid-range and Control, they're going to give them a class-specific card that lets them draw better than that in the future. Because they
Well,
tried
here's-
with Neptulon.
Here's my question was Shaman a thing before Nax and GVG?
Before Nax and during Nax, Shaman was the biggest counter to Control Warrior. It was like Control Warrior, Control Shaman, and Handlock were the biggest like control decks. And let me tell you, Control Shaman was so freaking fun to play.
So it's kind of almost, I mean, we do have to add the other cards that have been added to the game, but it's almost like a reset of how was the game before Nax and GVG? And then we can kind of get an idea of what classes might be more playable than they were before.
That's the tricky part to predict here, guys. Like, we don't know what 100 to 200 cards we're gonna get. We don't know
That's
what
why.
is gonna be. What cards of these are we naming that are like, oh, they totally got that wrong? I mean, it's like, well,
And-
of course we got it wrong. We didn't even know what cards were coming. I mean, we'd even at least have an educated guess if we saw what cards were coming.
It's exactly why everyone's saying don't dust your cards, because we just don't know yet. And
Yeah.
I'd say more than likely we're going to get an announcement here in the next week or two. It's got to happen soon.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Because
in
you
our news
remember how
section.
in Blackrock Mountain everyone was like, oh, dragons. There's going to be dragon decks, all the
Yeah.
dragon decks. And it didn't happen. And then it wasn't until TGT came out and then all of a sudden there was Dragon Priest. So suddenly you, like the next thing you could be looking back at all these cards, maybe even with Inspire that we don't use. But if there's some cards in there that synergize well with cards that we don't even use right now and nobody even looks at, then all of a sudden they're a thing.
Yeah, just don't
It's
know.
possible.
Nozdormu's going to be the new meta.
Oh man, I know they said they weren't gonna buff any cards, but I really, really freaking want Nozdormu to be a good card. I just love Nozdormu as a character in the lore. Is probably the biggest reason.
You could do
How
that Shadow
would
Step
you
Rogue
buff
deck
Oh gosh. Rip
that literally
Rogues.
actually broke the game.
Yep.
It wasn't like a really good deck. It just broke it so your opponent couldn't actually play.
And then we hit them
And
with
we know how much you
Nozdormu
love
for
that,
16.
Andrew, not being able
Yeah.
to play.
That's
That
a new
sucks.
definition of not being able to, because you literally can't play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
Let's see.
All right. So where
Void
are we
Terror,
at on the
Shadow
list?
Flame, Doomguard, Siphon Soul. Yeah. Armor Smith, Frothing Berserker. I've heard a lot of talk about how they might nerf Knife Juggler.
Yeah, a lot of people are in the community are really hoping Knife Juggler gets changed because it's just like
Really?
another bad RNG card that.
Well, they're taking away Implosion, and they're taking away Muster for Battle. Two big cards that synergized really well with it.
yeah, those are
So-
probably the best ones. Don't forget
but
on
they're-
Unleash the Hounds,
they're-
which will be there. So
That is true. That
Yeah,
is very
the
true. But that's really dependent upon the other side's board state. Because if they don't have a whole lot of minions out, you unleash the hounds and you get like one or two minions.
Yeah.
So
the knife
that's
juggler
kind
is
of
more of a design space like blockade than anything. If that makes sense, like they're trying to
Yeah.
basically change cards so that they can continue to make better things for you to get.
Yeah.
But they don't want to like negate the fact that you can have good cards in Classic potentially. We don't know what they're gonna do yet. Like it could be even next year they just decide we're gonna try to migrate some of our Classic cards into Basic, and then we're gonna delete the Classic card set. It's like whoa, or we're just gonna only include all of the Classic cards within Class cards and get rid of all the neutral cards. This is like, I mean, I don't know what they're gonna do.
I don't think there's going to be any huge change like that after they just made a huge change. Like
It'll at
they
least
must
be a
have
year
thought
later.
they must have thought this through like for a long time before they implemented it. But I do agree with you about Knife Juggler, where you say the cards that have stopped them from making other cards definitely eventually get nerfed. If they feel like this one card, well, we can't make that card because then it would be broken. If that's the kind of thing that it does, then
Which
they
means
definitely get nerfed.
Which means apparently that Master of Disguise is going to get nerfed here because they've
Yeah.
gone on record saying that that's the one card that allows, or that means that a lot of cards won't be for all classes.
Yeah, I
so.
think
Even
it's a
though nobody
permanent
uses it.
stealth.
Yeah, but they would start. If
Yeah.
you think about animated armor, if you could Master of Disguise that, if you don't have a Flame Strike, then
Later.
tough luck. You
Yeah.
lose. You know.
Yeah.
It's just a really good card.
Yeah.
All right,
They don't
so
want
I'm
to
just
make
gonna-
cards that would make that a good card.
I'm just going
Exactly.
to list off some of these real quick so we can progress to our emails, okay? So we have
All right.
Ancient Watcher, Knife Juggler, Arcane Golem, Sun Fury Protector. Oh, maybe that could be a potential change card. Wild Pyro, Cold Light Oracle, Injured Blade Master, Mind Control Tech, Defender of Argus. It's, a lot of people have been...
I hate Defender of
Maybe
Argus
that.
more than Sun Fury Protector.
Twilight Drake, Violet Teacher, Azure Drake. Azure Drake is a very powerful card. Stampeding Kodo still is a decent card now. Argent Commander was played a lot in the original. Gadgetzan Auctioneer, even after the nerf, is still used. Sunwalker, very good card. And then if we move to epics, we have classic class cards. Ancient of Lore, Ancient of War. Those could be targets. Snake Trap, Ice Block, Pyroblast is being played a lot. Lay on Hands with the Murloc Pally, Cabal Shadow Priest, Preparation. We just got done talking about Doomhammer. We talked about for like the last 2 weeks. Twisting Nether, one copy. Shield Slam, Brawl, a copy of Gorehowl is going to be back in the meta. Doomsayer, Big Game Hunter is potentially going to be one of their zeroed in points.
I don't know. I mean, that's been around for so long, and people have complained about it for so long, and they never did anything to it.
Yeah,
But
but
They
it's
just
just
started-
started that they can do it.
If they're now changing basic cards, though, everything's going to be on the chopping block potentially.
Yeah.
They'll make more smaller changes like we talked about, but
It would be
Yeah,
nice
it's
if it
very
was destroys a minion 8 instead of 7.
Even then, it still would be whined about, but we'd have to see what Blizzard does with it. I think that they need to make the body like worse, and it still need to cost more mana or something really weird. Because it just is tough. And then we
I don't know.
got-
I don't think it's that much in the meta right now.
I see it in a lot of decks still. It's almost auto include one of for a lot of players.
Yeah.
Yeah. Faceless Manipulator, Molten Giant, Mountain Giant. Mountain Giant and Molten Giant were the main reasons that Big Game Hunter was brought into the game initially. And then if you look at our legendaries that are sticking around, I just basically listed almost all of them that are usable. We have Cenarius, which is even seeing some play as a tech card in Druid. Archmage Antonidas, I think a lot of people aren't really realizing how big this is, that he's going to lose a lot of the spare part type decks. That was the one thing that brought him back besides Freeze Mage, so Archmage may not be as usable without all of those GVG cards. Even in Tempo Mage, like you don't have your Unstable Portal, you don't have your Flame Cannon, It's going to be tough. So Archmage Antonidas may not even get changed because it's just going to be bad again. And before GVG came out, Archmage was like the worst legendary. Well, not the worst. I won't say that. Like there's still the beast.
That's
in
extreme.
Illidan. So yeah, but it was probably one of the weaker of the class legendaries for sure.
Sure.
And you got Tyrion and Van Cleef and Alakir will be good again. I'm hoping because Alakir is such a great card.
Another one of the
Grommash,
ones
don't
I
forget.
don't have.
What's that, Andrew?
Grommash, don't forget.
Yeah, Grommash and Lord Jaraxxus. Those are all your good class cards that are sticking. And the neutral cards we just talked through, Thalnos, Leroy, Harrison, Black Knight probably could be back, depending on how many...
Because
Hot
Sludge
cards that get
Belcher is
druid.
going away. And Black Knight was so a part of the meta before Sludge Belcher came out.
It was.
It was a huge swing card. And then we have Sylvanas, Ragnaros. There has been some people projecting in and out that Alexstrasza could get changed, but I don't really know how you would change it.
Yeah, she's a hard card to change.
Ysera Malygos Deathwing even. So
Deathwing. Oh
are
man,
all
that's one of the
your-
first legendaries I got in packs. I so wished he could.
Oh,
work
really?
Yeah, Alexstrasza was my first legendary. Very
Nice.
excited when I opened that card.
I crafted her. Oh.
And I had the Disenchanter because I wanted her in Golden, so rip Alexstrasza. All right, so let's get into our news. Andrew, why don't you take the first point here?
Well, I'm seeing the first point here, and I didn't know that.
I found this out this week.
So can
Wait,
you tell
where
us
was that
about that one
posted?
specifically?
Where did you get that information?
It
from?
was posted. I actually need to have Andrew Google it while I'm talking, but I can't
Okay,
remember
I'll
the
do that.
exact site. I think it's called Shack News or something like that, or Shack Gaming. Basically, on March 9th, Blizzard's going to do something like they did with the Grand Tournament, where they mailed a bunch of VIP news websites and article places a little banner of stay tuned on this day, we're going to make a big announcement, blah, 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 blah. So this is their notorious announcement of announcement. They're going to tell us what's coming on the 9th.
Dang, that's a... Oh, I guess that's just a couple weeks away. It feels like a long ways away, but...
So yeah.
Well,
better
never
than
mind.
April.
When I said earlier that we're going to get something in the next week or two, looks like March 9th is when we're getting it.
Yeah, and the reasoning for me behind this is this weekend they're having the Hearthstone Championship Tour tournament in the EU. That's happening today, tomorrow, and Sunday. And then next weekend, when we have D2 on the show, which is another one of our announcements, next Friday we're going to have D2 on the show, he's going to be an EU caster. He's won the casting competition. He's going to be on our show next week. During next weekend, that is when Cora and Kevin Hovdestad and Raven are going out to cast the Americas one.
Hey!
So basically, this week we have 13th and 14th, and the 20th and the 21st are booked with Hearthstone Championship stuff, right? Or preliminaries. And then I think even the 27th and the 28th are going to be the tournaments or 26th and 27th are going to be the tournament for the finals of that series. Is that correct? You guys think that they're doing the finals the same weekends as preliminaries? I don't know. I don't
know.
how much about
I
it.
don't follow that stuff, honestly.
Yeah.
So we don't really follow the
So
pro scene a
basically,
whole lot.
they're really busy, and the only time they could have done it is March 9th.
Yeah, they're probably just wanting to wait until all the tournament stuff falls down for the season, quarter, however you want to do it, and then they're going to release the cards for the next one really soon. And they could do, it doesn't mean that they're announcing the cards and not releasing them the same day. That's still a possibility. They did it with League of Explorers, right?
Yes,
so
but
they
it was
could-
an adventure. I'm thinking they'll start announcing it, and then it'll be sometime in March.
Yeah, I can see them saying the announcement on Wednesday, the 9th, and then next Monday or Tuesday the 15th, we get all the cards. So
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Something I heard on the Angry Chicken was that they specifically said when the changeover happens, whatever rank you're at will be on both ladders, on Standard and on Wild. So it's like they
That's
know
right.
that they're going to be doing it in the middle of the season. So it's not going to be at the beginning of the month.
Yeah.
So March instead of April, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're definitely getting it before April.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Looks like Hamboy12 says we only play top 8 for preliminaries and then the champions the week after or 2 weeks after, I'm not sure. And then he says Season champions are March 18th to the 20th. But prelims are just this weekend and next weekend.
That's
So,
cool.
Okay.
yeah. I'm hoping that they'll do something. Like, we'll know on the 9th, so just stay tuned. Like I said, Overwatch beta is out. If you guys are liking Overwatch, add me. Let's play. It's really fun. It came out
If you got it,
Tuesday.
if you got it, I detest
You got it, flaunt it.
and you are welcome to stop listening right now. That's all. Just-
Another random announcement is I was able to go guest on the Happy Hearthstone podcast with Josh Augustine.
Yay!
And it's their episode 65, but they haven't released it yet. I think he hasn't even released the 1 or 2 shows before mine, but he'll release them one right after another. We'll see when it actually goes live, but stay tuned on our social media. We'll let you know when it goes. Our last big announcement is Hamboy12, or Joe Williams, is going to be joining as a very much a part of our Velen's Chosen crew. So
Yay!
we're really excited to have him on board with our podcast. He's going to be what we would call a very regular guest. So we need some more flexibility with a lot of our schedules. Sometimes we can't all three always be here, especially with Eve's got a new job with some nutso hours. We want to give her a break from time to time. And then Joe will
Graveyard
also,
shifts, yo.
yeah.
Baby crazy.
And then Joe will also potentially be able to get me out of having to host all the streams all the time, potentially. So we'll see how that works out in the long run. But it's really excited that we have Hamboy12 joining the crew, and he
We
will
have
not
the
be with us-
perspective of a many times legend player.
Yeah, and,
So.
and that's
Which
the
is good.
biggest reason. We got some big feedback from our listeners that a few listeners in concordance with our podcast that said that we need to have a little bit more of a pro opinion at the top level. So I feel like we kind of can bridge the full gap now for opinions.
Yeah, it's good.
All right.
And maybe
we
I'll
have-
actually get Legend one of these days now.
Yeah.
That's-
Yeah.
well,
So that's
Shake up
his
in the new
trial
meta, that's
basis.
the
Is
perfect
Andrew
time
has
to
to
go
hit
for it.
Legend the first month, or the end of next month in March for Hamboy to be on or off the podcast.
unless he's fired. That's it's
Or he's
easy.
fired.
It's simple at least, but just playing.
Yeah.
Ah.
All right. So Vincent, aka Hippie Corpo, in the chat room today, sent us our email. So we're gonna close out with the email
Hey.
today. Who would like to read it?
I got it.
You. Go ahead.
Vincent says, "Hey, Rob, Eve, and Andrew, great show about the massive announcement. It's a really fun show to listen. It was packed with info. I'd like it if you could discuss this point in your next show. One thing that I think is really healthy for the game is that GVG contained all the biggest RNG swing cards in the game. Blizzard received a lot of critiques about it a couple months after GVG release, saying that some of the set's cards were the bad kind of RNG. They've learned to use RNG in a much more controllable way since then, and they've released really good RNG cards in their next set, and things like Discover are the perfect example of good RNG. So the bad ones he mentions here are Piloted Shredder, the Boombots, Implosion, Crackle, Unstable Portal, Flame Cannon. I think he's just saying that there's a lack of controllability with the RNG, or less than he'd like. And he says, I probably forgot some, but all those cards have the possibility of making or breaking a game on the spot, and the fact that they are gone is really good for the health of the game and the mental health of the player bases. That's true. On a side
My
note, a lot of
mental
sticky
health.
minions are now removed with Nax out and GVG rotating out, meaning that AoE spells receive a buff, and no more are the days of flame striking a board that gets refilled with a 4/4 Nerubian, 2 spiders, and other random 2-drops. Keep up the good work.
Not the
That's
two
a-
drops.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether this is completely intentional, because the rules that they set for themselves about standard just, it happens to be that Nax and GVG are the first ones to go, which did have a lot of RNG cards in them. They've definitely stood by the decision to put RNG cards in, saying that they
Right.
want it's kind of like a higher level of play where if you are able to react to whatever comes out of the shredder and react to however these other cards work, then that makes the games more interesting to watch and at like a higher level of play. So
Yeah. Andrew,
It-
thoughts?
it's not saying they won't have more going forward, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, you can go both ways on it. The way I see it now that it is happening is that we can kind of call the last year and a half that GVG's been out as the random years. You know, like there will be YouTube videos that live on in infamy, and I'm sure 5 years from now we'll look back and say, like, I can't believe that a piloted shredder determined who the, you know, Hearthstone world champion was, because something like that is probably going to be looked on that way. So in Wild, you'll still have a ton of fun, a ton of, you know, randomness and good stuff. Totally agree with Vincent that there's that Discover was a step in the right direction, and that we'll probably see more of that kind of thing. Not Discover in particular, but as they're releasing new mechanics and stuff like that, that we'll see things along those same lines. Blizzard's genius; they'll figure it out. So.
Well, I feel like they're trying to go for the esports scene, right? And the critique that they're getting in the esports scene is the RNG thing. So in order to be taken seriously as a serious sport, you know, going towards the future, that may have been something they've really been thinking about.
Yeah.
Especially since Discover, like everyone said, is a much better use of RNG. Mm-hmm. But it also kind of has to be balanced with fun to watch. Because if you get down to the point where it's like chess, and it's like Secret Paladin,
yeah,
where you play this on turn 1, this on turn 2, this, you know, the value play,
autopilot.
It's not as fun to play. It's not as fun to play against.
Right.
So I hope that they do consider putting those different kinds of those cards in going forward.
So for me, stuff that I'm looking forward to with the set disintegrating, I guess you could say, into Wild, or dissipating into Wild, would be Blizzard can now have more free space to include more Discover cards, which they know a lot of players like. Good, controllable RNG that doesn't necessarily always win you the game. You still have to play it from your hand. So some kind of RNG that fills your hand but doesn't like give you this massive change like Unstable Portal. It's like, oh, I could play Dr. Boom like right now. How about that? And then the other thing that I really like about it is it gives them a lot more free space as far as like giving us more combo pieces for different combination cards that we can do combo decks with. A lot of players love watching combo decks, even if it's not like an RNG like crazy fun thing with like Implosion and Knife Juggler or Unleash Knife Juggler, or like Flame Cannon into Unstable Portal into Arcane Missiles, you know, and Flame Wakers on the board. Like, those are some exciting moments, but it's more exciting in other ways to, like, watch somebody who's really good at Patron, like, counting their math and, like, saying, okay, I have this much damage, I need to, like, make sure I clear the board with all my patrons and then go in, or Oil Rogue, or Freeze Mage. Like, those are highlight combo decks, and then they're going to give tools, again, different tools that are probably better tools to control decks to survive against aggression, giving aggression kind of a different style that they can move forward with. Stuff like that. I feel like that just frees up so much of their design space to kind of move forward in a new direction altogether.
I think it's just easier to parse, honestly, for new players when they're watching things. If you see in their hand the two pieces of a combo, then it's like, oh, you know, you can understand that that's a win condition. And announcers for games and stuff, when they're looking for those specific cards, it's easier for people to get, okay, he's got lethal now, or he's got a really good chance at winning the game.
There's
when
not
you have
enough
combo
if
decks.
scenarios for them to have to like comment on. It's like, well, he could do this and win. He could do this and lose. But we don't know what's going to happen. It all depends on where the stupid flame cannon's going to go.
Yeah. I'm most excited that it's creating space for something new. And even if that something new is actually something old, it'll feel fresh at least to have Alakir come back, or whatever the case may be. So I'm really excited to see what the game looks like. Until then, I'm going to play as much as I can of what exists.
Yeah.
But
Right.
no, I'm psyched for what's coming.
Yep, get
Everybody
those
play
golden
your
tallies
Secret
while you still
Paladins.
can.
Mhm.
All right, it's time to move into our special thanks and Patreon supporters section of the show.
Thank
got-
you.
Sorry, we got a review from Canada.
Yeah, we did.
Hey!
I piped-
Yeah.
All right, so Canadian gets to read this one.
All right. Dysplastic from Canada, 5 stars. This podcast is just right for intermediate budget players. I've been playing Hearthstone off and on since launch, but only recently started trying to ladder more seriously. I looked into a few podcasts to help me out, but felt a bit like Goldilocks out there. Either the podcast was too focused on the high ranks and competitive scene, or too casual and explaining concepts I'd understood long ago. Valen's Chosen is just right, and the hosts are fun and engaging as well. I love that analogy.
That's
awesome.
a great analogy. So props to you for analogy skills.
Thank you, Dysplastic. I hope I'm saying that right.
All right. Andrew, why don't you go through and name off our awesome Patreon supporters this month?
What is up to Pratap, to Gabriel, and to Garrett S. Thanks for supporting the show, for helping us make it better. If you're interested, you can go to patreon.com and search for Valen's Chosen Podcast. We've got rewards set up on there. We'll be looking in the future. We're going to do some giveaways. We're going to do some equipment upgrades and stuff like that. So you can go check it out. And I was reminded today that podcasts are free to distribute, but they're not free to make completely.
Yeah.
Thankfully, they're relatively cheap. But it takes up a lot of our time, and it actually does cost money even for server costs and stuff. So like we always say, everything in our Patreon is going to get put right back into the show. We're not looking to gain a couple extra bucks. So if it's helpful, if you want to support it, we'd love to have you on the team there.
All right, so I'm going to run you guys real quick through how you guys get involved. So the best way to get involved is to leave us those iTunes reviews, especially if you're Goldilocks. And this show is just right for you. So thank you guys so much for you're already supporting us. We're growing. Our show is growing every single week, and we have only you guys to thank for that. And you know what? If you really like the show and you really want to continue to see us grow and to continue to produce good content, the best way to do that is make sure people can find us. So iTunes does that. You can share it with your friends personally. You can steal their phone and go to their podcasting app and type in Valen's Chosen and go, boom, subscribe.
Stop suggesting that.
It's hilarious.
No.
People want to do that.
Go in and then review from their device. That's what you need.
That's the way to go.
Oh,
You can chat with us on Twitter.
I do not support this message.
You can chat with us on Twitter at Valen's Podcast. There's no interesting things that you put into the symbols or anything weird. It's just Valen's Podcast with no apostrophes, nothing. You can support us on Patreon, like Andrew was saying. It's the best way to figure out what we're giving away. We just revamped some of the stuff that we're doing for reward levels. We're giving away access to our show notes while we're writing them every week. If you check out those things, we have some really cool things about you can guest on the show if you have a certain support level. So really cool stuff. And then Eve and I and Andrew are talking about potentially making some in-house t-shirt designs for special designers people. So we're working on some of that. Merch. You can subscribe on our YouTube channel, which is new. We're going to upload the shows there. You can view any of our past shows as well. You can watch the show right here on twitch.tv, not Rob May. You can actually request Hamboy12 or myself or Eve and Andrew to do what we call a a collection coaching session, where we look through your collection with you, try to help you what would look really well with dusting cards and crafting cards, depending on what your goals are, goal assessment. And if you really want to, Andrew's all about that arena stuff. I'm all about just watching you play a couple games with whatever decks. Depending on Hamboy12's schedule, he'll let you know. You can email the show like Vincent did, ask questions, leave cool comments, and you can even check our website for more details. I put the extended show notes after the show is posted in there as well. Andrew, where can people find you outside of Valen's Podcast?
You can find me on Twitter at Andrew is Living. You can search for my arena tips on YouTube under the username Banaka Freak. And you can find me on Battle.net Getting to Legend with Mech Oil Rogue with Lightning Ruler. And I'm Andrew is Live number 1973, and I'm totally serious about that, Lightning. If you make that, I will make it. It'll grind 1 million games on that deck until it happens.
Miracle Rogue with Molten Giants and Ice Hell.
Together, we will create a new meta with only one deck. It is possible, and it will happen.
The Rogue deck will be called the Rogue Masterpiece.
Yes.
Of mechs. Hey, Eve, what about you? Where we can find you at?
I'm on Twitter. Hold on, let me scroll down. FHINNOVARR. Finnavar. And on Twitch as Eve Martin, and on PlayStation Network as Eve Martin as well. And if you want my BattleNet so I can add you as a friend, just send me a request, but like write a little something. Say a little something. Tell me who you are and what you want.
Yep. Andrew, can you let the viewers know where they can find our newest member of the squad, Hamboy12?
Hamboy's on Twitter at Hamboy12_HS, and he's on Twitch, Hamboy12. And
right.
he's the man.
He is the
In
man
case you didn't know.
with the plan. All right, you can find me on Instagram and on Twitter at NotRob. You can find me on Facebook for design and photography, mainly portfolio at facebook.com/NotRobMedia. You can add me on BattleNet, but please send me a tweet so I know. I just cleaned out all of my friend requests because I haven't gotten a tweet from any of them. So it's NotRob1514 now. And you can find me on Steam at Sir Twick if you want to play some Rocket League. I probably won't be playing it now that I'm in the closed beta with Overwatch, but, you know, I'm all up for Overwatch, people. And then you can find me on the Twitch channel right here at twitch.tv/NotRobMay when I'm streaming other stuff. So thank you guys for tuning in for yet another really fun, packed show. We'll see you guys next week. Not all who wander on the ladder are lost.
Adieu, adieu. Parting is such sweet sorrow.
Not all who wander are lost.
See you guys next week.
Later.
Bye.
Take this time to consider your past deeds.
Stop asking questions. You had your chance. Did I miss it? My face!
What is my face from?
It's from one of the
Wobbling runs.
If he dies, if it's his death.
Yeah,
metal
like
sound?
when the three runts die, they spawn the three additional ones, and then
Yeah.
when one of those three has a specified animation sound when he dies, just like my face.
This is why you listen to the after show live on Twitch. I also forgot I found a Reno Rogue list that was really interesting. Hey, come on, man. Come on.
A lot of hate for the Reno.
Actually,
It was,
Phenom and Vicious Syndicate have been playing a Reno Priest deck.
Yeah.
Just
That's
don't play it. Just don't play Reno and Akani's on the board, right? Because
That's how you do 30 damage in one turn.
that's how you what?
That's how you do 30 damage in one turn.
Yeah.
Without being Patron Warrior pre-nerf.
If somehow you could get your opponent to play it, no, Ancestor's Call wouldn't do that. I'm trying to think of some way you could force it out of their hand, and Ancestor's Call is it, I think, but that doesn't activate battle cries.
You could get
boy
a
said,
mage to
Why
mirror
play a
image
good deck
it.
when you can play Reno Priest?
No, mirror image wouldn't activate battle cry either. I don't think there's any way to get a card out of your opponent's hand to activate a battle cry.
No. I mean, if you were going up against a mage with Reno, you could make them mirror image your Akanai Soul Priest. Then be like, now play your Reno.
Oh, then
Let's
it would
see your heal bot now.
Yeah.
keep them from playing Reno. That's interesting.
Yes.
The Reno prevention
Like,
method
here, take
works
my
only
Arcanine.
against mage.
Man, Lightning has all the weird decks on lock, and I love it. He's got a Reno Priest.
He should make his own podcast of like, what's the discount or what's the not discount crap deck of the week that everybody will enjoy.
Nah, that's the thing though, man. I was trash talking that
Ice
that
Howl
Ice
list.
Howl, and it worked in his deck. It was a lot of fun to play, and it was
I just
at
like
least
smack talking him
51%.
on stream. I think that's the most fun. He comes into the stream
He
all
does.
the time and just smack talk his bad
Yeah.
decks. Does it make
The
him
most fun
mad?
I've been having in Hearthstone lately is Brawl.
The Dominion Brawl this week.
I just did it for my pack.
Well, I did it to finish all my quests because I had like 3
Mm.
masked up waiting there.
Yeah, that's a good Easter egg for people to find at the end of the show. Play the brawl.
Hey,
your
the
stuff.
brawl's fun.
Get your
A lot of
stuff
people
done
like the
in the
brawl.
brawl. No, I'm serious. Like, you get all your stuff done in the brawl. You don't have to play
Yeah.
ladder. Just get your coins in brawl and then go have try hard later.
Like if you don't have a lot of cards that you need to play rogue, and you have a couple rogue quests that you need to get rid of, go play rogue in brawl. Rogue is pretty good in brawl. Okay, I think I'm gonna go back to sleep.
Right.
I'll stop recording at that point. That's good.
Ah.
Oh.